Welcome back. I'm Helen.
I'm James.
And we are global nomads. And in 2024, we sold everything we owned to retire early and travel full time. Welcome back to part 4 of our Amtrak Across America series. If you missed out in part 1, we traveled on the California Zephyr from Chicago over to San Francisco. In part 2, we boarded the Pacific Surfliner and traveled between San Diego and LA. And then in part 3, we rode the Coast Starlight from LA all the way to Seattle. Today you join us for our epic adventure on the Empire Builder, where we're going to travel from Seattle all the way back to Chicago. Empire Builder travel suits some of the most scenic country in the States, and we had originally planned to ride this so that we could stop off in Glacier National Park. And so we made the journey in 2 sections. The first section we took from Seattle and got off in Whitefish, and then we reboarded in Whitefish after a few days in Glacier National Park and made the final leg of the journey back to Chicago. If you see the other videos, you'll know there's 3 classes of travel on Amtrak. Basic coach, which, although it's coach, is not like being on a plane, is going to be a nice cushy padded seat with plenty of legroom, much like a domestic first class airline seat. This is comfortable enough, but you maybe don't want to do it for days at a time. People do, and they'll take the whole journey, the whole 3-day journey in here, but it's not something I would really want to do personally.
But plenty of people
do. And it's absolutely doable, and a good budget option as well if you haven't got the budget for a roomette or a bedroom. The other 2 levels of service are going to be a roomette or a bedroom. The roomette is going to be a small enclosed room which has 2 seats facing each other with a table in between, and these 2 seats will flatten down into a lower bunk in the evening, and then a top bunk will fold down from the ceiling. This is a good option for 2 people, although you need to be sure that you know the other person well because you are going to be cozy. The final option is going to be a bedroom, which is much bigger, and you do have access to your own in-room toilet and shower. It's a cozy toilet and shower. It's very snug, but this is a nicer option if you do want a bit more room. The lower bunk will fold out into like a 2/3 bed, so the lower bunk is bigger, and then again the top bunk will fold down from the ceiling. If you're traveling in a roomette, you do have access to shared bathrooms and also showers on the lower level of the carriages. Otherwise, in coach, you're going to have access to a shared bathroom. In the main on the long distance routes, Amtrak use 2 different types of trains. There's going to be the Viewliner or the Superliner. The Viewliners are typically used on the East Coast routes and are single level. So they have the coach, the roomette and the bedrooms, but the carriages themselves are single level. On the coast to coast routes, East to West Coast routes and the West Coast routes, they use the Superliner carriages, and these are basically double decker. So you board on the lower level and there's going to be roomettes, some luggage storage, bathrooms and showers. And then there's some stairs to go up to the upper level where there's more roomettes and bedrooms. On this route, on the Empire Builder, it is a Superliner, and we typically try and book a roomette on the upper level. Up to you. If you've got mobility issues, for sure you're going to want to be on the lower level because it is a narrow staircase. But the upper level does tend to be just a little bit quieter because you're further from the tracks. If you are going to be sleeping overnight on the train, the other thing about the upper level though is it does shake a little bit more. It's basic physics, the center of gravity. The higher up you are, there's going to be slightly more movement. So you might want to bear that in mind, and I would also suggest that you bring some earplugs and an eye mask. Because you are crossing over lots of roads and through towns, there's a lot of horn blowing. A lot of horn blowing.
And you might be at the front of the train and you might be at the back of the train.
And even if you're at the back of the train, you are going to hear the horn. So be aware of that. And if you are a light sleeper, be sure to bring some earplugs and an eye mask. It's going to make your journey much more comfortable. The other thing we typically bring is an inflatable pillow. Amtrak do provide you with sheets and a pillow and a blanket, all of which are actually quite nice quality and quite comfortable, as well as a mattress topper that goes over the top of the bunks. But if you do like to sleep with more than one pillow, we found inflatable camping pillows worked really well.
We leave via Seattle's King Street Amtrak station. This is the main station servicing the Pacific Northwest and was built in 1906. Compared to the other stations we've been to, such as Chicago or Los Angeles, this is not a very big station, and therefore it does not have the Metropolitan Lounge that you would find in places like Chicago and Los Angeles. If you recall from previous videos, the Metropolitan Lounge normally has facilities for people in roomettes and sleeper carriages. For this train, everyone was put together in a waiting area with very limited seating. You'll sit in this waiting room if you can find space, and then about 30 minutes before the train leaves, they will call you for boarding. All you've got to do is walk straight outside and then you can get on your train.
As you exit the waiting area and go onto the platform, you'll look for your carriage number, and at the entrance to each carriage you're going to find a car attendant, cabin attendant, whatever you like to call them.
The Empire Builder consists of two trains. The one that we are travelling on starts in Seattle and another one starts in Portland. They then get to Spokane and they merge the two trains into one, and then all of the carriages will then go from there all the way to Chicago. On our route from Seattle, we have a total of 38 stops. We travel a total of 2,206 miles. We're going to be spending 45 hours and 15 minutes on the train. We're going to go through Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and we're going to finish in the state of Illinois.
For this leg of the journey, we left Seattle around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It's going to take us around 13 hours and we're going to cover around about 600 miles before we reach Whitefish at about 7 o'clock in the morning. As we leave Seattle, we travel along that side of the Puget Sound and get some great views of the sunset. If you're travelling in a roomette or bedroom, you do get meals included on the train, and so we enjoyed our dinner and breakfast before we arrived in Whitefish the next day. If you are headed to Glacier National Park on the Empire Builder, you might be wondering why we didn't get off at the station for Glacier National Park or West Glacier. There are actually two stations in the park. We chose Whitefish basically because this was the easiest place to rent a car from. We planned to rent a car and stay a few days and head to East Glacier and West Glacier, so we were going to need a car. And options were limited at the other two stations if you didn't go to Whitefish. The drive from Whitefish to the park isn't that bad. I believe from memory it was like an hour. We picked up our car in Whitefish and were able to pick up a few supplies here as well because it's a much bigger town before we headed off for a few days in East and West Glacier National Park. We will have a video coming out on those in the future.
A couple of hotels that we stayed in while we were in Glacier National Park. The first one is the Belton Chalet, and that's located directly next to West Glacier National Park train station. One of the other hotels that we stayed at was in East Glacier, which is the Many Glacier Hotel. Now, both of these buildings are historic, and that means they don't necessarily have all of the modern comforts that you would come to expect from a Hilton or a Hyatt, but their location is what wins them over each time.
Also, definitely worth a visit to both sides of the national park. The entrances are located quite a long way apart from each other and offer quite different experiences. One of the main reasons for us to visit Glacier National Park was to drive the Going to the Sun Road. And based on timings, we should have been good. Sadly, they'd had some late snowfall, so we couldn't drive the whole route. You can access part of it from East Glacier and part of it from West Glacier, but the highest altitude section was still closed and didn't reopen until about a week after we were there. And bear in mind, this was the end of May, and they were still getting snowfall. So just a heads up if you're headed there for that.
After a few days at Glacier National Park, we get back on the Empire Builder at Whitefish for our journey back to Chicago. Now, of all of our journeys on Amtrak, and this is the fourth one, this was the only one that was actually running late. Contrary to normal experience on Amtrak, and we've done it before, they ran on time pretty well for the whole of the journey, but this one they didn't. The day before, we were actually talking to some people and the train was running 15 hours late. So we considered ourselves very lucky to only get back into Chicago at a mere 3 hours behind schedule.
A top tip for Amtrak basically is if you have future plans, make sure you've allowed time after you arrive at your station before you head on with those plans. The plan should really be plan for the train to be late, because it often is. Because Amtrak operates on tracks that are not owned by them, they're actually owned by the freight companies, there's often delays because the freight lines and the freight trains take precedent. So you are often held up waiting for either a freight to come the other way, or if it's a single track line, or you're stuck behind one, or there's animals on the line, or there's been an accident, or and. We actually did another trip from Orlando to Savannah on the train, and we were 5 hours late, and that's only a 5-hour journey, so that gives you an idea. But as you said, on the previous trips it's been good.
Whitefish Station is outside of the park, so once you get back onto the Empire Builder and you head towards East and West Glacier Station, you're actually in the park, so all of the scenery starts to become pretty spectacular. We managed to walk to the back of the train. This isn't always an option, and we managed to set a camera up and we could record some video of the train leaving the national park.
This is a really interesting perspective, offers you a different view of the scenery. This section after Whitefish is really one of the most scenic of the entire journey, and you really want to try and do this in the daytime. One of the reasons we chose to travel from west to east was because this section should definitely be in the daylight. Otherwise, if you travel east to west, this section can sometimes be in darkness. If you are going to travel on one of these long journeys, then I would suggest that you come prepared with some entertainment material. Amtrak do say that they offer Wi-Fi, but we have never got it to work, basically. So even if you have your own cell service, which obviously we did, we had a plan with Verizon. Because some of these areas that you travel through are pretty remote, there's still going to be areas where you can't get service. So you can't even rely on your provider's service 100% as well. Most of the time we had service, but there was some bigger sections that we didn't have. So come prepared if you want to download your Netflix or whatever your entertainment choice is, that you might want to do that before you join the train.
We pull into Chicago approximately 3 hours late, and as we said, this is the only Amtrak train we did in all of our 7 trains that were actually late, so good one for Amtrak there. So that concluded our Amtrak Across America, but would we do it again?
I think so for sure. It's not the cheapest way to travel. It's not the most comfortable. It's not the most efficient for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely not the quickest.
But is it fun?
It's the most fun way of doing it.
It's definitely fun. And you see so much of the country that you just don't get to see from an airplane.
If you look at riding Amtrak on any kind of logical sense, it makes absolutely no sense. And that's the reason why you should do it, because it doesn't make sense. The problem that we have had in the 20 years we owned a business is we could never dedicate the time to be able to do a journey like this, because you're always looking to get from A to B at the quickest possible time. And this is a lesson that Helen taught me very early in our marriage, is that it's not always the place you're going to that is it's the journey as well as the destination. Amtrak will definitely give you that. I don't think that either of us could honestly believe some of the scenery that we saw on this journey. We had a total of seven different trains on this, and amongst those we saw all manners of things. We saw beaches, we saw
desert, mountains,
red rocks, we saw glaciers, we saw
and wildlife,
state parks, national parks,
tiny remote villages, agriculture. It's big cities. It's such a way to see the country. It really is, and it really makes you realise how diverse the United States is.
And I think a lot of Americans will have not travelled outside of the United States because there is so much to see. And we've been in Florida for 20 years and really haven't had the opportunity to travel around America. We've seen a few bits, but this was a real eye-opener for us because it really just shows you the diversity of the country, and it really does give you some perspective on everything.
And how big the country is.
And how huge it is.
You know, when you look at a map, you know that it's a big continent, it's a big country. But it takes travelling from one side to the other to really appreciate the size of the country and the scale of everything. So yeah, it's not the most comfortable, it's not the most luxurious for sure, but it's a great adventure. If you're looking for an adventure and a different way to travel, I would definitely recommend it.
And I would also recommend, we try to have a rule that we always break the journey up by having one night on the train and then we get off, and that allows us to refresh, have a shower, because whatever you say about it, Amtrak is not the most comfortable. You're not going to have your greatest night's sleep ever. That's definitely not going to happen between the horn and the movement on the train. So you've got to accept it as part of that, and to do that for 3 solid nights would be difficult. So we break the journey up, and that gives you a chance to explore America rather than just look at it out the train window.
So we really hope you enjoyed this series of our journey across America by Amtrak. We certainly did.
It was great.
Be sure to like and subscribe the channel, and you can see where we go next.